Okay, good morning. On behalf of Villanova University School of Law, I want to welcome you as Dean of the Law School here for our second annual Sports Game Day competition. This is really a unique collaboration among two schools, the Center for MEMS at UCLA and the Jeffrey S. Moorad Center at Villanova Law School. And it's unique because it brings lawyers and business persons together and really to create a sort of unique dialogue in higher education and discussing some of the most important and interesting topics in the sports industry today. I want to thank all of the organizers at Villanova and UCLA for helping put this competition together. I want to thank all of our speakers for coming out here. I also want to thank our judges for giving their time and effort for coming today, and want to thank you all for coming out here and participating in this friendly or maybe not so friendly competition, given that there's $10,000 in prize money at stake today. So I want to end here by the way I really should have started, by thanking the founder of the feast, Jeffrey Moorad, for his vision in bringing us all together, and to say good luck to you all, and may the odds be ever in your favor. Thank you.
Thanks to Dean Gatanda, and again, this is a unique and premier event. I hope some of you were able to see our symposium yesterday, and this is part two. As far as we know, there's nothing like this in the country, a combined law and business competition. We're so proud to have you here. It's going to be a great day. And I think as part of your entry fee, we are giving you a special treat, which is a career panel from industry leaders and experts, top people in the business, for them to talk about their careers. And I include in that our founder, Jeff Moorad. So what I'm gonna do is start with Jeff and go down the line here. We've got people that have worked with the Eagles, the Browns, the Sixers, Sixers aren't here, the Flyers, the Phillies, David Cornwell, who's got a resume as long as this building, and we have the athletic director here at Villanova. So we'll go down the list, and I'll do the same with my background. Just kind of give what I'd like, and start with Jeff, is sort of give a biography, if you will, of the career. Where were the inflection points? What sort of took you to another level? What is instructive for law and business students going forward? So we'll look at that, and we'll go down the list, and what I want to do also is allow a lot of time for questions and have you have that opportunity to talk to industry leaders and get close, if you will, in this setting. So we'll kick it off with our founder of the Moorad Center, Jeff Moorad.
Thanks, Andrew. Well, welcome everyone. I'm going to save my formal remarks to the group for the time just before we start the competition a little later, with our judges in the room as well. But I will say this, having taught at UCLA the last 3 years at the Anderson School, I've never seen so many students look so good. Wow. Anyway, thank you all for being here. We really appreciate it. You not only look good, but I'm sure you're going to be terrific today. I saw a number of teams preparing and practicing last night, so those who didn't, you should feel bad. Anyway, we do appreciate you all being here. Career-wise, thanks for the remarks, Andrew, and look forward to hearing from really a distinguished panel here. And I'll let Andrew do the formal introductions of our panelists. But I've spent 30 years in the sports industry. It's the only thing I know. Educated as a lawyer right here at Villanova. Actually, truth be told, just across the parking lot in the old building where we went to law school, as did Mike Stiles and others. But when I came out of law school, I had a traditional father who said, look, I know you love this sports stuff, but maybe you ought to be a real lawyer first. So I followed his advice, and for 6 months I did that, and I was a litigator. And after 6 months I said, you know what, Dad, I'm going to go pursue my dream. And so I did, and I started representing athletes, and that was the start of a 20-year career in that field. I was very lucky, ended up in the fortunate position of becoming partners with Lee Steinberg at the height of his career. We had the largest NFL practice in the country for probably 15 of the 18 years that we were together. Best known for representing quarterbacks. I think at our height we had 25. One of the smartest decisions I ever made along the way, working in our firm called Steinberg and Moorad, was to hire David Cornwell as my general counsel. So David and I have had a long history as well. But after 20 years in the business, I got tired of the derivative role that the agent plays. Although I loved it, to this day maintain relationships with a whole number of clients that I represented. In fact, just talked to Mike Stiles about one of them, Pat Burrell, who remains a great friend, played for the Phillies for some years here and then out in San Francisco. But I got tired of the role and I desired more of a principal role. So once again, as luck would have it, I was offered a role to become the CEO of the Arizona Diamondbacks. Went to Arizona, ran the club for 4.5 years, invested into the partnership as well. By the time I left, was actually the largest shareholder in Arizona. And I only left because in 2008, I put together a group. We bought half the San Diego Padres, and being a Californian, I desired to go back home, so I went back to California, ran the Padres for 3.5 years, and in 2012, we sold the team. So since, I've been teaching at UCLA, having a great time. Thanks for the Bruins that are here. Thanks to them. Appreciate you making the trip across the country. And I started a business with a couple friends called Moorad Sports Partners. One of my partners is a fellow named Peter Uberoth, who used to be the commissioner of baseball and ran the Olympics in Los Angeles back before you were born. But Peter was always a mentor of mine. I went to him with the idea of buying businesses in the sports industry, not teams, but businesses that make real money. And we put together a group. He said, I'm too old to have my name on it. You put yours on it. So we called it Moorad Sports. And today, that's what I do. I love what I do. I love my involvement here with Andrew, with Dean Gotanda, and Villanova. And again, it's a real pleasure to have you all part of this morning.
I'll just let you guys talk about your career. Start with Barry Hanrahan from the Philadelphia Flyers.
Good morning, and thanks for having me. Is this on?
There we go.
Here we go. Taking a little bit of a different path than some of you probably are pursuing right now. I worked in the sports business for many years before I decided to go get my law degree. I've been in the National Hockey League for about 23 years now and worked in various departments with a couple of organizations. I started with the Tampa Bay Lightning and worked my way into the hockey side of it. And that's where I really had, a passion of, learning the contracts and contract research and being involved in the GM duties and assisting the general manager at that time. And the piece of advice I received was, you're on a good path, but go get a law degree. That'll help you the most. So it wasn't until I came to Philadelphia, I worked for Bob Clark, that a couple of years under my belt, assisting him in various duties. Again, back to contract research, salary arbitration, things of that nature, that I went to him and asked about getting a law degree. They were very supportive. I went ahead and did it. And it was the right time for me because now I broke into the side of hockey ops as assistant general manager, and the timing was perfect because the collective bargaining agreement just changed. We had a lockout in 2005, and the new era of the salary cap, which was new to the National Hockey League, was donned. I remember with Bob Clark and Joe and I was speaking earlier, we wanted to get experience. So we went in and met with the Eagles, and we just had a chance to talk to them, and how to tackle this, new phase of managing a hockey team. And the Eagles were very supportive. We got a lot of ideas. And since that time, my responsibilities have been primarily working with the general manager, first Paul Holmgren, and now it's Ron Hextall, managing the day-to-day operations of the team, player contracts, salary arbitration, and most importantly, the salary cap. So that's pretty much my duties. I've been a hockey guy my whole life, and it's where I'm at now, and really look forward to the challenge of getting the Flyers back to being a playoff team and building a winner here in Philadelphia.
Thanks, Barry. David Cornwell.
Good morning. So I think that through Google or other things, folks might know that I represent Jameis Winston, have represented Alex Rodriguez, Ben Roethlisberger, Brian Braun, and others. But I would not have ever been in the position to represent them had I not represented Pete Rozelle, Commissioner of the National Football League, Paul Tagliabue, Commissioner Rozelle's successor, Lee Steinberg, and Jeff Moorad. When we talk about our career paths, maybe one thing that we don't spend enough time on is what you should be doing on each whistle stop, each stop in your career. And we have a different culture now than we did when we were coming up, where we accepted the hierarchy, we accepted the pecking order, and I would encourage you to have an old school view about your career, and that at each whistle stop is an opportunity to learn something. Talk less, listen more, be a sponge, be passionate, and also be fearless. Believe in yourself. I graduated from Georgetown Law in 1985 and started working in a law firm called Whitman and Ransom. I was a securities and antitrust litigator and couldn't believe that I was getting paid to read and write. I was happy. In high school, I realized, although I played football and basketball and went on to play college basketball, Division III, I knew that I would not make a career as an athlete in sports. And I mentioned to my mother that I would like to have a career in sports. And at the time, one of my teammates, Neil Mitchell, was the son of Bobby Mitchell, a Hall of Fame player for the Washington Redskins and assistant general manager at the time. And she said that I should call Mr. Mitchell and ask how I can make a career in sports. And I did, and he said, take economics and math, and I figured I just wouldn't have a career in sports. But I had that longing. Horace Broadnax played at Georgetown. He grabbed the Villanova player and pulled him down in the national championship game, trying to get a charge in the last few seconds of the game. He was my first client. I negotiated his deal in the United States Basketball League. I sniffed around sports trying to figure out a way while I was at the law firm to have some involvement in the business of sports. And I had the opportunity to interview with the National Football League and was hired and worked there for just about 5 years. I left. The process of leaving began in an elevator where this guy was on the elevator with a beard and aviator sunglasses, a sports coat, and jeans. Almost what he's wearing right now. I get on the elevator and he says, "Hey, are you David Cornwell?" Yeah. And that began a relationship that continues to this second. I went and worked with Jeff and Lee as an agent, was then recruited shortly thereafter out to become the general counsel of the Upper Deck Company. I want to tell you that I don't believe that there's any such thing as a bad experience. There's just good and bad reactions to experiences. The truth is that my DNA didn't fit with what I needed to do to be an effective sports agent. My DNA is to be a point guard and a lawyer. And I went to Upper Deck and became general counsel for about 5 years. We say that was my sabbatical. I got, I think, a practical MBA there. And when I left, I hung my shingle, and the first clients I got were Lee and Jeff as their general counsel. We were sitting in a conference room. I represented not only the agency, but also the players, our clients, in legal matters, some of which were disciplinary. And having worked on the disciplinary program policies when I was in the league office, I had a pretty good track record on behalf of our players. We were sitting in the conference room, Lee, Jeff, and me, talking about Achilles Smith, his dad, and the Nike deal. When Richard Bertelsen, general counsel of the NFLPA, called, we took the call, and he asked whether or not Lee and Jeff would permit me to represent players who were not clients of our firm in disciplinary matters. We had a discussion, and Jeff said, how bad can it be if we can tell other players that our general counsel represents players of other agents? So they gave me the permission to do that, and off took a national practice that had never really existed before, representing agents and representing players in a traditional legal role. I'll end with telling you that I think that the most important attribute, quality, or skill is passion. I don't know anybody who's successful at what they do if they don't love what they do. And life will figure it out for you. So don't lie to yourself. But if you're passionate about whether it's sports or anything else, don't hold back. Don't hold back. My two brothers are surgeons, and which makes me the black sheep, and incredible sports fans. And the truth is that the hardest part about my job is convincing my brothers that it is a job.
Quickly on David, we grew up together in Washington, D.C. He went to a rival high school. As I said yesterday, he was a star number 2 guard, and I played against him as a backup 5th string point guard. He's a great friend. We've known each other since we were 12, 13 years old. And I want to introduce Joe real quickly, say one thing in your career that you have to have is people that look out for you. I joined the Packers as a young cub doing contracts for a team for the first time. Joe Banner reached out. I mean, there's a guy that's secure in his career. The NFL is a cutthroat place, and he helped. And I'll never forget that. So Joe Banner.
Thank you. My story is a little bit unusual, and I'm not sure, other than a reiteration of a message David just gave you, will be that relevant to you. But I never went to law school. I don't know. I may be the only person up here that didn't. Although it's a huge asset, so I made my career in spite of it. So, but I was in the retail clothing business, and was lucky enough to have somebody come along that wanted to buy the business that I had started, and left me in a position to kind of decide what I wanted to do, and have the freedom to kind of, answer that question whatever way I wanted to. And I decided I wanted to try to work for an NFL football team, even though I had not played football, had no experience in football, had nothing on my resume that indicated there was any reason that anybody should give me an opportunity to do so. I fortunately knew somebody who knew John Beek, who was a general manager of the Denver Broncos at the time, and someone else who knew George Young, who was a general manager of the New York Giants at the time, and was fortunate enough to have gotten 2 sort of information interviews, which obviously I was hoping were going to lead to some kind of a job opportunity, but were set up as information. And John Beek was very, cordial and, interesting and informative, but didn't really go anywhere. George Young actually got angry at me.
He gets angry at everybody.
That's what somebody told me. Don't take it personally, but at that time. said that my resume was comparable to somebody who called up a talk radio station to criticize general managers, and how in the world did I think I deserved an opportunity. And in his anger at the end, he said, you know, the only chance you ever have to get into the NFL is if you found somebody who was going to buy a team, and maybe you helped them with the acquisition or something, and they felt obligated to give you a job at the end of it, because otherwise you get absolutely no chance at all. And as life's often more lucky than it is good, Jeff Lurie, who was a childhood friend of mine, within a couple of weeks, out of the blue, and we weren't best friends, we just knew each other, called me, and happened to have a family that had an extremely successful business, and said, I've been dreaming about owning a sports team for my whole life. I'm actually going to try to turn my dream into reality. Would you be willing to help me work on acquiring the team, and if we get it, help me run the team? So I didn't have to think a very long time to answer that question, yes. And it led to almost an acquisition, actually, of the Patriots, which fell through during due diligence, which is how Bob Kraft ended up owning the team. And then the acquisition of the Eagles, where I worked for almost 19 years, and then 2 years at the Browns. But I think what may be relevant to you in the story, and David told you this, and I think anybody who's been lucky enough to have success in this career will tell you, what you have to be willing to do is not fear failure and be willing to chase your dream. People literally laughed at me when I thought I could go from running a clothing business to getting a job in the NFL with no stops in between. And the truth is, it was a pretty far-fetched concept with a minimal chance of succeeding. But the fact that I thought that I could succeed at, and I was willing to take the chance and didn't mind the rejections that I knew were coming, is the only reason I got the chance to have 20 years in the NFL that I wouldn't trade for anything in the world, and be able to sit here and talk to you today. So that'll be my main message to you is, figure out what you want and then go try to make it happen, and don't listen to anybody who has any negative view of your dream. Thanks.
Mike Stiles.
Good morning. I can't tell you, like a number of these people, that my lifelong dream or passion was to be in sports. Actually, my desire from high school was to be a trial lawyer. I grew up, born in Philadelphia, grew up in Fort Washington, went to Upper Dublin High School and the University of Pennsylvania, and to Villanova Law School, where for the first time in my life, particularly my first year at Villanova Law School, I became a serious student and worked very hard, and was a pretty successful student at Villanova, and loved my education here. I went into the district attorney's office in Philadelphia, hired by Arlen Specter, and I worked for Arlen Specter and Emmett Fitzpatrick and Ed Rendell. As DAs, I was Rendell's first assistant district attorney. Went in after 12 years. I left the DA's office and ran for a common police court judge in Philadelphia. Was successful in that election in 1983, and I was a trial judge for 10 years, mostly in criminal homicide matters. I was fortunate enough to be appointed by Bill Clinton to be the United States Attorney for the Eastern District of Pennsylvania for 8 years. Another job that I really loved, as I did love being a judge. And as you may know, presidents appoint U.S. attorneys, and new presidents appoint new U.S. attorneys. So in 2001, President Bush very, very appropriately appointed Pat Meehan, and I was looking for a job and facing the terrible prospect, from my point of view, of working in a private law firm for the first time in my career. And I went to work for the Phillies. And when I'm asked about how did somebody who was a trial judge and U.S. attorney come to work for the Phillies, there's some similarity to what Joe said, but I answer that question by this true story. After a couple of weeks at work at the Phillies, I got a phone call from a complete stranger somewhere in the Midwest. I don't remember his name, but there had been some publicity about U.S. Attorney goes to the Phillies. And he called me and said, "Mr. Stiles, thanks for taking my call. I've been practicing law for 30 years, and I've been trying to get out of the practice of law and into sports." And he said, I can't get anybody to talk to me. I can't get my foot in the door. And I read about you on ESPN.com, going from U.S. Attorney to Vice President of the Phillies. And I wondered whether you had any advice for me. And I said, "Well, Mr. Jones," whatever his name is, "let me ask you a question first." He said, "What?" And I said, "Do you have a best friend, a guy who was your roommate at college, who's the president of a Major League Baseball club?" And he said, "No." And I said, "Well, I do." And that's how I came to work for the Phillies. David Montgomery is a dear lifelong friend. And I remember like it was yesterday, I was interviewing with law firms and went out to dinner with David. We dropped our wives off, parked the car. We're walking to the restaurant, and I said, I'm interviewing with law firms, and I've been interviewing with Ballard Spahr, and I know that they do some Phillies representation. And I said, I expect that I'll do a lot of white-collar criminal defense work, given my background, which would be fine with me, but I want to do some other things. Do you think I could do some Phillies representation if I went to Ballard? Completely unexpectedly, he said to me, "Well, I'd like to talk to you about coming to work for the Phillies full-time. We're building a new ballpark. You've got management skills, running the U.S. Attorney's office and being a lawyer that I think we can use." And as soon as I heard it, I knew I was still going to be safe from billable hours and private clients. And so I took the job, and I'm delighted. Delighted that I did. And if I have any message for you at all, it's sort of like what you've heard here. You have to do, I believe, what you want to do, what makes you happy, but you also along the way have to do it well. And if you don't do it well, you're not going to have the next opportunity, whether it's in the same discipline or some others. And there's just it's corny, but there's just no substitute for hard work and doing the job that you're presently doing as best you can, and it's going to lead to you doing other things that you want to do. Thank you.
Thanks. Vincent Castro.
Good morning. I'm also not an attorney or didn't attend law school, so I don't know if that's good or bad, but I've had the privilege of working in intercollegiate athletics for the past 25 years, the last 15 here at Villanova as the athletic director and 21 in total here. So there are obviously a lot of opportunities. I have, at least in my experience here at Villanova, at least 2 or 3 lawyers on my staff, administrative staff, sometimes by design, sometimes just that's the way they broke into the business. So as our business of intercollegiate athletics has evolved over the last 25 years, it has become, for better or worse, much more of a business. And there are just significantly more opportunities for young people with terrific training, motivation, and pursuing a dream, and there are real career paths. So as you may be thinking about that as you sit here today, I think there are real ways to get there. This program today, I think, is one of those ways to prepare yourself for that career. But when I broke in, it was a little different. I sound like an old timer, but I graduated with a degree in accounting. Got into the accounting business. Felt like that was a great career path, and soon after, like Jeff, maybe 6 months into that career, I figured this really wasn't where my passion was. Sport had always been an important part of my experience growing up, and I wanted to see, how I could pursue a career there, and I just really wasn't sure where to turn. So I started talking to some folks and ended up, and baseball was really my primary interest at the time. I ended up at the time, and I think it was December of '87 or '88, taking this great leap, which I thought at the time was a great leap of calling my boss and telling him I needed a few days off for some reason that I made up that wasn't entirely truthful. And I flew to Atlanta to the winter baseball meetings with a couple of friends of mine where they had a job seekers program. And at the time, you can imagine we had paper resumes and a conference room, and they just had postings of jobs in minor league baseball in all sorts of glamorous outposts like Pocatello and and places in the deep South and little towns all over the country that hosted minor league baseball properties. So you put your resume in the slot, and we didn't have cell phones, believe it or not, so you sort of waited in the room for someone to call your name, or you checked your messages back in the room, and you had interviews on site, whether it was in someone's hotel room or in the lobby of the hotel or at a restaurant. So fortunately, I got a couple of calls, was able to meet a few people, essentially minor league baseball general managers at the time who weren't much older than I was. And I was offered an internship that started that summer for $400 a month. And I had to, between December, I accepted the job, and then between December and April when it started, I had to figure out a way to tell my boss and my parents why I was quitting this job in accounting, which seemed like a great career, to go take a job in Williamsport, Pennsylvania for $400 a month, which had no promise of a job after that. It was a 3 or 4 month assignment, and I was off and running. So unfortunately, it was one of those things when you jumped in, you knew right away this is what you wanted to do. I never worked so hard in my life, both physically and mentally. It was very difficult work at the time, but it was great. As Mike knows, baseball is a grind. I mean, it's every day, and it's 14, 15 hours a day. And you get home at midnight, and you come back the next day and do it again. But it really sort of set the stage for me in terms of the commitment that you have to make in this business, and meeting folks and learning the business really from the ground up. And to this day, when we hire young people in our department, the monthly pay is a little bit better, but not much. I mean, you really have to cut your teeth and maybe take a step back and work really hard for a period of time in order to get that first shot. And that would be my advice today is, if you're willing to do it, I think you may have to take a step back financially to jump in, but you'll learn very quickly whether this is a career that you are passionate about and want to pursue, and you'll be successful, or it's something that you don't want to pursue, and that's also a good lesson to learn.
And let me add a little bit about my experience. Like Jeff and like David, I think we're a small handful of people in the country that have been on both sides of the aisle. I came up in the agent business working for a guy named David Falk. As Lee and Jeff were the premier in baseball and football, David was the premier agent, or still perhaps is, in basketball. And what it gave me an opportunity to do was, while he was representing Michael Jordan and all these great basketball players, we had a very small football practice. So I saw that as an opportunity to build football practice under the guise of a big firm called ProServe and use Michael Jordan and use the leverage of that. And I was able to do that and sort of manage the football practice for a firm called ProServe in Washington, D.C. for 6 years, to the point where I remember I was doing a contract with Mike Lynn of the Minnesota Vikings. We get done, he kind of looks at me up and down. He says, "Do you speak Barcelonan?" I said, "Is that Spanish?" "Yeah." It turned out it wasn't. But he said, "Yeah, we're starting a new league. It's called the World League. We have teams overseas. It's going to be great. We want you to be the general manager of the Barcelona Dragons." I said, "What's that?" "Well, we're starting a team." So I was young. I was single. I didn't really want to leave player representation, but I could run a team, albeit a minor league team overseas. So I did it. And I went to Barcelona. I had to hire a coach. I said, "Who do I hire?" They said, "Well, here's some young hot assistants named like Tony Dungy and Pete Carroll." I'm like, "Who are these people?" Way back. So I ended up, they were intrigued, but they said, no way, I'm not going to Spain. Ended up with a guy named Jack Bicknell, who had coached Boston College. Basically, in 3 months, we put a team together from scratch. An experience over there was, well, I'll never forget, because, you know, fans cheered at the wrong times. They did the wave the entire game long. We never could get enough food. We had to put night tables at the end of their beds with pillows so their feet wouldn't flop over. It was not just a job. It was an adventure. That league suspended or folded, came back as NFL Europe. I left and went back to the agent business with a firm called Bob Wolf Associates, another premier pioneer in the industry, Bob Wolf. He had suddenly, unfortunately, passed away. His firm was left to his wife, who had no interest in running a sports firm. She sold to a conglomerate group in Boston, one of the partners being hockey legend Bobby Orr, and I worked there for 3 years. And the primary time I was there, I was dealing with a minor league baseball player by the name of Ricky Williams, who was playing for, I think, the Batavia Phillies. And he was playing a little football at Texas as a fullback. So got to know him, became good friends, started representing him as a professional baseball player in the summertime. And then, of course, he blew up as a football player. Got the relationship. After his junior year, he was going to go pro. I was going to have the watershed climb in my career. He says at the last minute, nah, I'm going to stay. I like Austin too much. I'm not going to go pro. Okay? A whole nother year, all the big agents nipping at my heels. Hold on to him. Heisman Trophy, the whole thing. Sign him. Then I'm traveling with a rock star. And for someone like me, getting Ricky Williams is a big deal. A few months later, guys start hanging around him. Long story short, I said, who are these guys? He said, they work for a guy named Master P. I'm like, who's that? He's a rapper. Okay, what about him? I want to work with him. I want you to work with him. You want me and Master P? Yeah. So there you have one of those life, crossroads in your life where you have to decide what to do. I wasn't going to go back to Wolf Associates without Ricky Williams. They were done with me if I didn't have Ricky. So I'm going to be working for Master P. That was going to be my life. All these guys have talked about allow for serendipity in your life. I think that's an incredible sound advice. Somehow, some way, within a day of that happening, I'm getting calls from the Green Bay Packers. And they say, I don't call them back because I'm tied up. I got Master P, I got Ricky. So I say, I can't talk to you about Hasselbeck. I had a third-string quarterback, Matt Hasselbeck. That's my only client there. They said, well, we're not calling about Hasselbeck. I said, why are you calling me? Well, Mike Holmgren just went to the Seahawks. I said, yeah, I watch SportsCenter. I know. Why are you telling me that? Well, he took Reinfeldt, the guy who ran the business operation, the salary cap, all that. I said, okay. So how'd you like to switch sides? I said, come to Green Bay? Yeah. So I said, all right, let me come talk to you. I go up there, I say, very honest. You have to be honest and direct. I said, listen, don't take offense, but do I have to actually move here to do this job? Move to Green Bay, Wisconsin? And they said, no offense taken. We know where we are. We know, but yeah, you got to be here. So again, at that time, now I had one child and wife, and I think as David and Jeff know, sort of getting off the train of chasing players around the country was something that appealed to me at that age, and I moved to Green Bay. And long story short, I was there 9.5 years, doing in some ways what Joe has done with the Eagles, managing the cap, doing all the contracts, running the business side, being sort of the fulcrum point between the football side, coaches, players, and the business side. And since that time, as some of you know, I've been doing a lot of media. I was, again, serendipity. I come into the media side right when the world changed in terms of football labor. There was CBA problems, 2011. And I was lucky enough to have ESPN hire me to explain that to the country, what the heck was going on. And now in my 5th year at ESPN, and I've been writing for ESPN, now writing for Sports Illustrated. And then Jeff came to me here with an incredible opportunity to manage this program. So that's me. And by the way, Jeff and I did not dress together this morning. I know.
Yeah, but I'm wearing California shades to distinguish myself.
I think the best thing now, it's your day. So here we are, and we have some time left, at least 10 minutes. We'll take your questions for any of us. I know you have questions.
Don't be shy.
Anything about any type of career.
Yeah.
And identify yourself if you would.
Hi, thank you all for being here today. If it's not career-related, is that still appropriate?
Sure.
Only if you say where you're from.
Sure. From the Darden School of Business at UVA. My name is Missy. My question is for any of you, but perhaps for the athletic director especially, where you see the place of college athletics moving and what your opinion is, especially in light of a lot of discussions about players getting paid and kind of going forward from here.
You've got a bunch of lawyers here with you, so.
Yeah, no media today, though, right?
No media. Just me.
All right, that's right. You're fine.
But seriously, no tweets on this subject, okay? So Vince can be honest and direct.
Yeah.
Deal?
And yesterday we did talk a lot about that, and obviously we're at I think a pretty significant time in intercollegiate athletics where there are a lot of worlds colliding right now. The traditional intercollegiate athletics model is under some duress from every angle. There are a number of litigations out there, as you may, certainly the law students are probably following it. And I think a number of those have triggered responses from the NCAA and its membership on trying to improve some of the resources that student athletes get. So, the issue of the significant increases in revenue, conferences and schools owning and operating their own television networks. So it has morphed into our business into more professionalized in a way. So that I think has sort of led to this question of should student athletes be compensated in some form or fashion? I think there's an argument out there that they are compensated in some form or fashion through the traditional model, right, scholarship, and in some things that don't necessarily haven't caught on in terms of the narrative. So outstanding coaching, personal training, first-rate facilities, nutrition, nutritionists, sports psychologists, and we have all these services available to our student athletes. People, in the media and the general public don't tend to put a lot of value on those things for some reason, but they're extremely valuable. And oh, by the way, a national platform for you to expose your talents if you are a student that is a potential professional athlete in their sport. But I think it's safe to say that there will be a shift, and I think the shift has already started towards trying to move the resources we have this huge resource base in aggregate, mostly driven by a few schools at the high end of the food chain, frankly. But I think you'll see this movement towards driving more of those resources towards the student athletes who are, as most people would think, are the primary generators of those revenues and resources. What model or construct that will take, I don't know. It's hard to say. Will there be unions? Not sure. If you saw yesterday, there's a unionization movement out there at Northwestern, which is unresolved at this point. Will student athletes be employees? I don't know. All of those things have complexities about them in many ways, and they can vary from school to school to school depending on your level, depending whether you're public or private. So it's like almost a chaotic environment, I think, for us right now moving forward. And so it'll be interesting to see what it looks like. As I said yesterday, I'm a firm believer in the collegiate model. Maybe not the traditional collegiate model. I think we need to make it more contemporary. But just personally, I'm not sure that having an employer-employee relationship is a great model for this great entity of college athletics. It's really something special. It's really something unique, and that's why it's valuable. And I just, again, personally believe there should still be some really strong intersection between education and athletics at this level and not just make it professional. There's a model for that. And by and large, the vast majority of students competing, even in Division I at the high levels, won't have an opportunity to play at that level. So if we can continue to make it an important part of their maturation and development and education to set them up for whatever careers and lives they have after, I think it's a good thing.
Thanks, Vince. In the back, go ahead. Yes.
Not anymore. I think that the National Football League recognized this year that it was not sufficiently sensitive to domestic violence issues. And, you know, the commissioners admitted publicly that he tripped up over those issues. And he also committed publicly to address the void. And he did so by hiring some extremely talented females. But as I kind of do my work, the primary counsel at the NFL Players Association, primary in-house counsel, she's not general counsel, but she does most of the work, is a female. I think that when you see the demographics of law school and business school, the number of women graduating, that it's inevitable that the pool will have more women. I started the NFL's minority hiring program, which led to us hiring the first 2 black head coaches in the modern era. And I think some of this is just simply familiarity and comfort. And the more that, if this is what you want to do, make yourself available. Go to things like this. If you're at a school, William and Mary, they've got a good athletic program. Get involved in athletic administration. Dawn Aponte is number 2 at the Miami Dolphins. Number 1, I guess number 2 on the business side. So I think that, you know, theoretically there are issues, but as a practical matter, you know, stomp that door down because you can get in.
You know, I would tell you that speaking only from a football perspective, there's progress, but a long way to go. So I would tell you I do think it's harder and probably a narrower group of jobs in which there's open-mindedness to that. It's an old boys club. It really is, and it's moving, and its eyes are opening, and there's some strong leadership, especially in the NFL, that's helping move that forward. But it has a long way to go. We had our in-house counsel at the Eagles was somebody highly respected. She's somewhat satisfied in the position, but frankly, she should be even in a higher role than she is at this point. She's very, very capable, as capable as anybody I've worked with in 2 teams. So made a lot of progress, but I do think there's still challenges and obstacles there.
That in-house counsel is actually on the board of the Moorad Center here, Eileen Daly. I would say in the agent business, I think it's a tough road. And I think there are more opportunities today because of the agencies that have rolled up and become part of what they now refer to as the mega agencies, the CAAs, William Morris, IMG, et cetera. And I think in those larger settings, there are opportunities for women. But the actual player representation has always been a tough challenge. I mean, we tried to hire a couple women over the years and plug them into our representation business. In both cases with, you know, something of, you know, kind of trial runs, if you will. the women just said, look, I'm never going to be taken seriously, and by the athlete, by the male athlete, and I'm always going to be a threat to the girlfriend or the wife. And in both instances chose to go another direction. Today there are opportunities representing individual athletes. I think there's more opportunity there. Certainly more female professional athletes exist today across the sports spectrum. So I think there are opportunities, but I think there's, a fair amount of headwinds that women will encounter on the representation side.
In terms of sports teams, professional sports teams, management, I would say to you, I don't disagree with Joe's comments. I don't know about agents. There are still some challenges, but I really do believe there are better opportunities than ever. We're talking about sports that men play. We're talking about, if you look at any media guide that's got names and pictures of all the employees, you're going to see an overwhelming majority of those employees are male. You may look at that and think, I don't have a chance. On the other hand, I look at that and think you have a very good chance, because there's not, in my experience, I can only speak for the Phillies, but I'm sure it's true throughout sports, there's not an organization that's not saying to itself, we've got to get more diverse. We've got to get more diverse gender-wise. We've got to get more diverse racially. I mean, we have one of our vice presidents, Bonnie Clark, is the head of our PR communications department. It was thought 10 years ago that, well, you can't have a woman head of your PR department. She can't be in the locker room running your communications department where she has to be. That's all turned around. That's not a barrier any longer. And I do think if you look at the imbalance now, it presents an opportunity, because most clubs and most organizations understand they've got to get better, they've got to get more diverse.
And quickly from the media side, I just think there's a real opportunity for female perspectives with a voice, as we had up here yesterday on the symposium. There's a need, and that's a real growth area. If you have something to say that's smart, that's sensitive, I think networks, blogs, websites are always looking for that. We have time for one or two more. Go ahead.
That's a great question. In fact, at our board meeting that we did after the symposium yesterday, I suggested that if we were doing another symposium next week, that the subject would be social media in sports. And I don't think there's anything more cutting edge today than understanding, analyzing, reacting to, creating policies around social media. I think it's a huge challenge. It affects teams, it affects players, leagues, everyone, agents, representative, everyone in the business is now impacted by social media. So I think we're kind of at the front end of that analysis and of an industry reacting to it. I think it's almost it's a great study to just watch it unfold, if you will. You all are part of it. Whether it's Facebook, Snapchat, Twitter, et cetera. The point is, it's a medium that you all are more familiar with. Even those younger than you are more familiar, perhaps, than you. So that it's an inevitable part of our future, and we've got to figure out how to navigate it properly. That's a very kind of a global reaction to the question. But any other thoughts?
I just know from a team side, it's twofold. I mean, when you're dealing with the daily schedule of the players, there's information that you don't want out there. So we have rules in place. We have guidelines for social media with our players, and the biggest thing is educating them, because we teach them from a media and a PR standpoint to always think before you speak. Be clear. Remember, you represent yourself, you represent your organization, you represent your league, and sometimes you get into the Twitter and social media aspects that, one quick comment, one quick statement could cost yourself, could cost your team, and put yourself in a difficult situation. So we try to stay on top of it when we do our annual meetings. When we talk about PR, it's not just about dealing with the media with the one-on-one post-game interviews. It's now about social media. It's become a big tool in how we tell our players to speak to the public, and we try to manage it. So it's become something that's real important from the team side. As I said, how you talk to your fan base, but more importantly, how you protect the team and how you protect your teammates from certain things that might slip out, whether it's an injury or whether it's something that could affect the game that night.
Yeah, as an active tweeter myself, I understand what it
You have
does.
100,000 followers, right?
Something like that. And I understand.
Come on, what's the exact number? You know.
Yeah, 160,000.
As of 8 a.m. this morning, it was 103,000.
160 something. And I know the exact number, yeah. And I got Joe working. Joe's getting pretty busy on the tweets. I just think, we can say Twitter, but it's so much bigger. It's a nice segue as we're opening here, and I'm going to bring Matt up in a second, because TMZ is not Twitter, but it is the same genre that real-time news changes the game, and changing the game without traditional media. Think about that. Think about what we're talking about today. We only are talking about, maybe only, because of TMZ. And I heard someone say the other day, if not for TMZ, again, non-traditional media, as someone from ESPN, Donald Sterling would still be owning the Clippers. Ray Rice would still be playing for the Ravens. Think about that. So what an impact it has had, and like Jeff said, maybe that's our next symposium. Okay, I'm going to bring Matt up in a second. First, let's give a warm appreciation for this panel, if you would.